Hey guys, Amy here, sharing my birth story. So when I was pregnant, I loved birth stories. I could not get enough of reading them or watching them on YouTube, but I also wanted to know what kind of story I was getting into. I would describe this story as a bit traumatic, but it does have a happy ending, so just be mentally prepared for that if you want to watch it. If you just want to see the baby, let me grab him. This is Nathan. I named him Nathan Benjamin. He is sleeping. Plop. He's very cute. And he has, I show off his hair. He has this little natural faux hawk. I just messed it up, but we don't do anything to it, and it just has this like big curl, and he's so cute. I can't even. Okay, sweetheart, I'll let you sleep. If you watched the last video, you know that I had a scheduled induction because I was completely covered on my entire body with this itchy pups rash. That's harmless to me, harmless to baby, but it really was an extreme case, and I was only sleeping 1 to 2 hours at a time, and nothing really helped the itching, and it was really bad. And the only cure for pups is giving birth. So when I was 40 weeks and 3 days along, I went to the hospital that morning for the scheduled induction. And it was so funny because I had been so adamant about waiting to be induced because I wanted to go into labor on my own. I just thought that would be a better situation. It turned out that while we were going to the hospital, I started to get contractions in the car. And then we arrived to the hospital, and they were originally going to use some kind of ripening agent on my cervix, I think like Cervidil or something. But I had already had more labor progress, and they didn't need to do that, so that was pretty neat. And when I got there, my contractions were like worse than like my worst period. Maybe I just don't have periods that bad. I would just immediately was like, can I have something for this pain? Because it was, I mean, if I have my period, I'll take an Advil or something, you know? So having like the worst period of your life, it's like, and I had this nurse. She was very encouraging, my labor nurse. I just remember her saying like, oh, it's only gonna get worse. So of course I was like, pain management please. So I got an IV of fentanyl, and then, you know, they kept on checking my cervix. I don't remember anymore how many centimeters, how many phase. I know he was at -2 station the whole time. They started the Pitocin on me, but I couldn't have an epidural right away for whatever medical reason. And I knew Pitocin sucked. And it was like there was like the fentanyl had worn off, and by the time they gave me the Pitocin, it was like somebody had put a knife in my uterus. It hurt so bad. They'd also given me, I always get the name of the medicine wrong. I don't know why I can't just learn it. It's like Arondax. It's for itching and anxiety. They gave me that for the pups, so that made me feel pretty good. And I also think I had Benadryl for the itching. And keep in mind, with this pups rash, I wasn't sleeping. I definitely couldn't sleep at night. I basically would just stay up all night watching Paternity Court on YouTube, trying to pass the time, and then around like 10 a.m. I would pass out from exhaustion. That was my pups rash life. So when I was at the hospital, I slept. I was out. I slept through basically most of my labor. I do remember I eventually got the epidural. It wasn't that bad. It was like, I mean, I would describe it as if some jerk decided to poke me with a thumbtack in my back. You know, it stung, but it didn't sting for very long, and it wasn't a big deal. After I got the epidural, I was this useless dead body, well, not dead, but you know, couldn't move. And so I just slept for hours and hours. It was a total of an 18-hour induction, and I was really asleep for most of it. At one point, baby's heart rate tanked. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, like 3 or 4 nurses just stormed into the room, and they started flopping me around, trying to move around my position. to help the baby because, you know, maybe he was smushing his cord or something. I must have been so drugged because I just remember being vaguely concerned, like, oh no, I hope I don't need an emergency C-section. That would be a really big pain in the butt. They got him all stabilized, but he just wasn't tolerating labor, so his heart rate kept dipping. They didn't like it. They tried stopping the Pitocin because they were like, the baby doesn't like Pitocin. And then I would just be having contractions, and he didn't like that either. And it would just seem like the further along I got, the worse the baby got. So the doctor came in, my OBGYN, that night, and she said that it wasn't a good situation. She didn't use these words, it's just my summary, but, you know, basically he's better out than in at this point. Labor's not going anywhere. If this doesn't improve in a few hours, I would recommend a C-section. And I was like, oh, because I know C-section recovery is really long and it's worse, but you know, of course, anything to get Nathan out safely. So I just, you know, accepted that was the situation and agreed with her. So a few hours later, she came by and said, this is the same situation. I recommend a C-section. And I said, okay. Signed the papers, and it took them a while to get me into the OR. It was a walk, don't run to the OR thing. It wasn't an emergency C-section. I would just describe it as an unscheduled C-section. They had the OR occupied by some other lady, and then she got out of there, and then they wheeled me in. And I don't remember the OR really at all. I remember like them wheeling me in there, but I can't really tell you anything about it. The next thing I know, I wake up and my abdomen hurts really, really badly. My voice was really hoarse, and I could only talk in a really quiet voice that only my husband could hear. So everything I said, the other like nurses or whoever they were, other medical professionals around would be like, what'd she say? And my husband would repeat it. I was just in so much pain, and I was asking for pain management options in a less than polite way. Like, I was just like swearing and, you know, this is so effed up. You guys are sadistic. Like, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was, you know, a series of, it was not polite. I guess they had already given me drugs, and so like they were almost like laughing because I guess I'm hilarious. I do tend to be really just like deadpan and serious, but even when I'm people find me either not funny at all or really funny. So I guess the people in this room thought I was really funny, and I'm not offended at all, like, because it is what it is. I'm sure they deal with a lot, and I'm glad that they handled my abusive behavior that way. But then I figured out, you know, wait, my C-section was already done. That's why my abdomen hurts so much. Where's my baby? And I, you know, was just hit with, I didn't see him be born. I missed it. They had put me under general anesthesia, and I didn't know. And they told me he was in the NICU, and he's full term. And they assured me that he was doing a lot better, and it was like, a lot better from what? The pediatrician came and talked to me, the pediatrician who was there when he was born. And he explained to me that when Nathan was born, he had to be intubated. You know, he wasn't breathing, or he didn't have a heart rate, or, you know, I'm fuzzy on the details, but his APGAR score was 2. And he was not doing well. They were going to transfer him to a higher level NICU. They were going to send him to Sacramento. And, because, you know, he was born at a level 2 NICU, which I thought was fine because he's full term. I didn't realize that, you know, I thought level 2 NICUs could accommodate, you know, everybody who's 32 weeks and up. That was my understanding. But they said that he was so bad that they were about to transfer him to a level 4 NICU in Sacramento. But then they canceled the transfer because I guess Nathan, he ripped out his intubation himself. I guess he got a lot better very quickly. But they still had him, they had a CPAP on him. They had him hooked up to all kinds of machines. I cried so hard that my machines kept beeping, and my husband kept on like telling me to breathe, because I guess my oxygen was really bad, because I was just hysterically crying. I got more details later on. A nurse actually told me on one of my last days in the hospital, I was in the hospital for 5 days. One of the last nurses I had, I was telling her the story, and she looked in his, this little book the nurses keep, and she said, it says here the cord was wrapped around his neck. It's like, why didn't anybody tell me that? They might have, though, because I was on so many drugs and I just didn't know. I had been feeling guilty, like, maybe I took the easy way out this whole time. I didn't have to be induced. It was technically an elective induction, even though my life was hell with this pups rash. And I took the easy way out with pain management, with the fentanyl and the epidural. And, just sleeping through labor. Like, if I had been one of those all-natural hippies, it would have probably been a very different experience. But I felt like maybe I had chosen too many medical interventions and had done this to us. My C-section and Nathan in the NICU. But when I found out the cord was around his neck, the nurse was telling me there was nothing I could have done. I could have made any choice and it would have had the same outcome. And that made me feel a lot better, that it wasn't my fault. So he was born February 8th at 2:27 a.m. I kept on asking when I could see him, but I had just had a C-section, so they wanted me to have certain hurdles, like be back on solid food, I think they wanted me to do, and be able to go pee by myself. I forget exactly what they were looking for from me, but I was not cleared. Like, they kept on saying, you'll see him soon, you'll see him soon. But I didn't see him for, like, he was born at 2 in the morning, and I don't think I saw him until that afternoon or evening. My husband was debating whether he should go see him. And at first I said, you're your own person. You should make the choice whether or not you want to see him yourself. Because I know we were thinking it would be really hard to see him hooked up to all the machines. But then I decided, I really wanted to see him and I couldn't. So I encouraged my husband to please go see him and take pictures for me. So he took pictures, and then by the time I got to go see him, I wasn't walking that day. The first day I didn't walk, so they had me in a wheelchair. And, I could only see him from wheelchair height. He was higher up on a bassinet. But he was so cute. And at that point, he was out of the CPAP machine. He just had, like, some big old honking thing on his nose. And they were telling us that he was doing better and better. And throughout the NICU stay, it was like, they were just slowly removing his medical things and seeing if he would do okay. So just step by step, they kept on pulling him back, and he did fine every step of the way. They decreased his oxygen, and then they decreased his IV, and then he was just being monitored. So they did eventually release him. He was born on a Thursday, and they released him to me on Sunday. Yeah. And then I went home on Monday, so you got better faster than me. I wasn't ready to go home on Sunday. I was really worried about breastfeeding because, I've been trying to do my homework on this stuff, and they constantly reiterate how important the golden hour is, and we didn't have that. We didn't even meet each other for hours and hours after. So I was worried that we weren't going to be able to have a breastfeeding relationship. Something I wasn't prepared for with the hospital is that people will come into your room constantly. Like, there was somebody who brought me food 3 times a day. I don't mind that person. The person who took my meal order every day, I don't mind them either. But that's 4 times somebody's coming in your room. Housekeeping came once a day. The nurses came multiple times a day to check my vitals and give me drugs. The NICU was coming in. I had a respiratory guy who made me breathe into some bong ripping machine. Because I guess they were concerned after the surgery that my lungs would get all infected. I don't know. But they made me do the bong ripping machine a lot. And I had people who were like, hey, I'm from the department of whatever. Here's a bunch of programs that are available in California. Cool. There was a photographer, but that was kind of awkward because my baby's in the NICU. And the photographer came by on Monday when we actually had him with us and got his pictures taken. But I mean, I'm not even naming everybody. The amount of people who were coming into our room day and night was insane. Like, I could barely text my family to tell them what was going on, because every time I would even like write 2 words, somebody would be bombing in with whatever. So where was I even going with that? Oh yeah, one of the people who came in was a case management worker. I guess when you have a NICU baby, you just automatically get a case management worker, which is very nice. I've heard from like other people who have NICU babies that the case managers help them with like the Ronald McDonald House and, you know, all these logistics that come with having a NICU baby. But they were giving us the impression that Nate wouldn't be there very long, so I was like, what do you do? I don't really need a Ronald McDonald House. I live 15 minutes away, and he's gonna be okay. So the case manager just said, you know, is there anything you need help with? And I said, I'm really worried about this breastfeeding thing, and, you know, I want to see the lactation consultant. My pups came back, so I'm still a little itchy. It's not as bad as it was though, but it did come back. It's awful. The lactation consultant came by before I could see him, and she showed me how to hand express colostrum, and she got a really decent amount. I was like shocked, like I didn't know I had anything, and she got like 5 milliliters, which was like, you know, she was squeezing into these little tubes, and I had like half a tube, and I was like, incredible. And so she got me more of those little tubes, and she brought that colostrum to the NICU so that Nathan wouldn't miss out on it. And after that, the NICU started getting really aggressive about getting their colostrum. They would be like, all right, we got your colostrum, we'll be back in 2 to 3 hours to pick up more. And then meanwhile, keep in mind, I'm trying to recover from this C-section, I'm a mess. The respiratory guy told me I had to do the bong rip machine like 15 to 20 times an hour, which is like every 3 minutes doing the bong rip machine, which is like, so each time I was hand expressing colostrum, I would get less and less. You know, the lactation consultant got 5 milliliters. My second time I got 3, and then I got 1, and then I got 1 again. And then the last time I only had like 3 drops. And I had been at it for over an hour. I thought maybe I was doing something wrong, so I was watching like YouTube videos on how to hand express, and I'd been doing it right. And just, I was empty. And so the NICU, they called me and they said, all right, we're here to pick up your colostrum. And I was like, I only got 3 drops. And I asked them, you know, would it be possible to try to breastfeed him? Because they didn't want me breastfeeding him before because he had some kind of medical thing going on with his umbilical cord. They had some kind of line in there, so they didn't want us, you know, breastfeeding and going all belly to belly and screwing up his umbilical cord thing. But at that point, you know, when I ran out of colostrum, they said that he had the umbilical cord thing out, so I could breastfeed him. And it was the middle of the night. My husband was asleep, and you know, he's been so amazing, and he's been such a great support person. But I really have a strong philosophy of self-care. You cannot take care of somebody else if you don't take care of you. And so I really wanted him to get his sleep. So I asked the NICU nurse if she could come pick me up in a wheelchair because I wasn't walking yet. And the NICU nurse, she picked me up, wheeled me over to the NICU. She showed me how to breastfeed him, and we did skin to skin, and it was just so nice. And I was just really touched at, you know, how great this NICU nurse was. Nurses are really amazing people, and they don't get enough credit. Afterward, after he fed, he fell asleep on me, and I really wanted to stay with him, but I knew that I had my own self-care regimen I had to go through. I had to get better for him, so, you know, I knew I needed to eat, to sleep, and the NICU nurse told me that he'd be hungry again in 2 to 3 hours. So I had to take care of myself in the meantime. I really just wanted to hang out with him and hang out skin to skin with him sleeping on me like he is now. But I had to leave him, and it was really hard. But by the second day I was walking, and so that was like my exercise, was I would just walk to the NICU every 2 to 3 hours and breastfeed him. It was really nice. And then on Sunday, I sent my husband home to check on our cat because I was, you know, induced on Thursday, and at this point it's Sunday. I had left out enough food for him, but I don't know, I was just worried about my cat. So I had him go home, check on the cat, and then he could take a shower at home because that would probably be a bit nicer than taking a hospital shower. Have some breakfast at home, which is probably better than, the hospital cafeteria food. So I sent him home, and he was just home for like 2 hours. And in that 2-hour window, the NICU came by, and they were like, he's not discharged yet, but we're gonna leave him with you because he's hungry. Goodbye. I overheard the nurses saying something about closing the NICU because he was the only one there. So I don't know if that's what was going on, but the NICU just randomly dropped him on me. And keep in mind, I had the C-section. I'm in my hospital bed. I can't get out of that hospital bed without using like both of my hands. Like I have to it was, so I couldn't get out of the bed with a baby because I just didn't have that kind of abdominal strength. So I'm stuck in bed with a baby on me. I can't change diapers because, everything is in this bassinet thing that's out of reach. And that's weirdly high, so I couldn't even, I'm really short. And the bassinet was really high, so I didn't even have, the upper body strength to maneuver him up on this thing. So the pediatrician came back a little while later. My husband still wasn't home. He was actually in the shower, and I texted him. They just threw Nate on me. Please come back ASAP. The pediatrician came by and said, okay, he's doing well. We're discharging him. Get him set up with a pediatrician appointment. Goodbye. So my husband came back, and we were really happy that Nate was discharged. It was a little tricky, though. I just think the hospital wasn't as equipped as our house, obviously, to take care of Nate. They just give you, this giant standalone bassinet thing that is, for sleeping and diaper changing, which doesn't feel very hygienic. And I couldn't lift him in and out of that thing, so I needed my husband to do all of that. And it's just, the pillows kind of suck for breastfeeding. I would definitely suggest bringing a breastfeeding pillow. I had heard that recommendation but didn't because I thought it was overkill, and I regret that. And it was also cluster feeding, so he was eating, every hour, sometimes half an hour. And my husband, wasn't really getting any sleep because I would constantly ask him to put him in and out of the bassinet for me because I didn't want to fall asleep on him or anything. That would be dangerous. But I did end up staying up all night one night because he was just cluster feeding, and it was there was no point to getting my husband to bring him in and out of the bassinet, so I just stayed up all night feeding him. So by Monday, I was so ready to be out of that hospital. I wanted to be able to exist without people coming into my room every 10 minutes. I wanted my baby gear, a proper place to change him, a proper place to put him down. I'm not grateful he was in the NICU. That's really messed up to say, but it worked out a lot easier for my recovery that he was in the NICU. It would have been nice if they had a well baby nursery staffed, but the hospital doesn't. I will say the postpartum nurses were incredible. The labor nurses, I don't remember them. I just remember the one nurse who said it's only going to get worse. My PUPS rash cleared up immediately after birth. Well, not immediately. It was still itchy that morning after I gave birth. Or I guess I didn't give birth. They sliced me open. By that night, I was opting out of the Benadryl. This PUPS rash just came back, it's on my armpits. Really bad. It just came back a few days ago. I'm about 8 days out from Nate's birth, so I don't know, time. I know this is a bit controversial and I really don't want to hear anything about it. I find the whole debate exhausting. But come Monday, we had Nate, we were waiting to be discharged, and we had talked about it and decided to have him circumcised. And so I knew the hospital did it, and I followed up with him and said, hey, I know it wasn't the top of their priorities in the NICU, but would it be possible to have this done? And the hospital was so weirdly aggressive about money. They said that they would need $275 up front, or they would check my insurance and make sure that it was covered. And then, in addition to that, the doctor wanted $200. So we're like, okay, no problem, whatever. And so they made my husband go down to some department at the hospital, checked our insurance, it was covered. So then the doctor would not see us until he had this sheet from that department that said either he's paid to them $275 or that it was covered under our insurance. So this doctor calls me and he's just like, hey, so you need to give me $200 directly, even if it's covered by your insurance, because insurance will only give me like $50 and I need the money up front. I was like, okay, that's fine. And he like kept on like drilling me about money, and I like never indicated it was a problem. Like, I don't care. And he was like, and then he finally agreed to do the circumcision. He came into our room and said, you know, oh, you made a very good choice. Here's all the medical benefits of it. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to numb him and he won't feel a thing. He'll sleep through it, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. Gross stuff. So he takes away Nathan and then he brings him back and is like, all right, $200. Cash or check. And it's like, we didn't bring our checkbooks or $200 cash to the hospital. We thought he was going to send us an invoice like a normal medical procedure. And so we're like, is there an ATM in the hospital? And he said, yes, in the lobby. And this guy was just, he didn't even look like a real doctor. Like, he wasn't even really dressed like a doctor. Like, my main concern when they wheeled out Nate was that they were going to, like, sell him to some couple in Wisconsin or something. Like, I was like, did we just let our baby get kidnapped? The guy definitely acted like he had conducted some black market transactions in his day. It was really awkward, and then he said, yes, there's one in the lobby, and my husband was like, all right, I'll go down right now. And the pediatrician who did the circumcision was like, okay, I'm coming back. So he leaves, my husband goes to withdraw cash, and the ATM at the hospital was broken, and I told my husband, you better go to a nearby bank, because he'll give you a second circumcision if you don't go take care of this. So my husband comes back with $200 in cash. The pediatrician comes back and looks it over. And he just smiles and is like, thank you, I will mail you an receipt. So it was just the sketchiest thing ever. Another thing we did on the day we were discharged, there was the newborn photographer who had come by on Friday, which was really awkward because it was like, my baby's in the NICU, you definitely do not want to do photos right now. A different photographer came by from the hospital. Well, you know, like a third party contracted, whatever. And, you know, I was like, yeah, I want newborn pictures. Sign me up. And this photographer took like a sheet and used that and nothing but the sheet and just like pillows and stuff from the hospital and created this like, you know, decent backdrop. And, you know, Nate was a little wild through the photo shoot. Like, he was kind of squirmy and whiny and whatever. He was, you know, not very cooperative. But we did get some cute pictures. He was super jaundiced in them, so he looks like Donald Trump's baby. But we did have a newborn session recently with a photographer where he's less orange, so that's nice. But yeah, that is my birth story. I know most birth stories don't also include your hospital stay, but I thought it was part of the story and it was relevant to me to go through how he recovered in the NICU and breastfed and all the weird stuff that went down. To me, it's all worth remembering. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to keep making these kind of videos because it was one thing to put myself out there in my pregnancy, but I just feel weird putting my baby out there. You know, there's people who are a little too interested in babies and that just weirds me out, and I want to give him a chance to be his own person, to have his own identity. I don't want to just put him out there like that day one when he doesn't really have a choice. Like, you know, show his newborn face now, but I'm not going to be like one of those mom vloggers. It's, you know, everyone's personal choice, each to their own. I'm not criticizing anyone. That's just not who I am. So I thank you guys for following me along on this pregnancy journey. It's been fun. And yeah. Alright, maybe if I have another, I'll do this again. But other than that, this is it. Alright, bye.